Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel and checking today's video out and spending some time with me. Guys, got a good one for y'all today. We're going to be talking about fishing a swinghead jig in the pre-spawn time of the year, springtime of the year, which is probably my favorite time to fish it without a doubt. This is an incredible fish catcher. It's sort of like for about 10 years ago, it was like a big deal. It's like everybody was using the biffle head, hard head, swing head jig, and it sort of faded out a little bit. But guys, in the month of March, April, and May, this is one of the best techniques for catching bass. And what I wanted to do in today's video is I'm going to show you how to set it up, show you some of the best gear for it, and then I'm going to talk about the type of areas you wanted to fish in or want to look to catch some fish on it in the lakes that you fish around the country. So it's going to be a really juicy little video here for you guys. Also, to get started, guys, just a quick invitation. I'd like to invite everybody to please consider hitting that subscribe button here to Intuitive Angling. It's free and easy to do it, no obligation. We're really working hard to get that channel to 150,000 subscribers. And also, guys, please check out our Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns, the maps I built for Fish the Moment. Great resources to learn more about your favorite lake. I'll link all that stuff in the description. And also, guys, I'll link all the swinghead jig stuff you need to get set up on that in my tackle warehouse link in the description of this video too, if you guys want to get set up on it after we do the video here. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the history of it. And if you're not familiar with what it is, guys, this is the what's called the hard head. Now, they make a lot of different swing heads, a lot of companies, but this is my favorite. This is the Jean LaRue hard head. It's the original one. And basically, it's just an EWG hook like this with a swiveling head on it. Instead of like a foot, this is like a football head, but instead of the football head being attached and not moving like it does on a football head jig, the head on the thing moves, and it causes the bait to have quite a bit of action. And what happens is when you reel this thing along the bottom, this hook moves around like that, and the trailer moves around, so it's got a lot better action than a football head jig. Very similar to a football head jig, but it's different as far as the look that it has and the conditions that it works in. So this is my favorite here is that biffle hard head, which I'll link in the description. And I use two trailers on it. There's a lot of different trailers that you can use. Most of the time you just want something with a flap and leg trailer, but the two that I'm going to show you guys here is the Zoom Speed Crawl and the Zoom Z Crawl right here. These are my two favorite. I'll show you how to rig it up. And also, one of the things about a swing head jig, before we get into where you want to fish it at, it's a total bottom contact lure. So I prefer to use the heavier head. I use a 7/16 or 9/16 most of the time because I want this bait on the bottom and I want it to stay on the bottom. So that's my two favorite sizes. Now, pretty easy to rig up, guys. It's just like rigging an EWG hook. I usually come in, maybe quarter of an inch, eighth to a quarter of an inch, reverse it like that, and then I'll come through. And on the Z Crawl, I usually leave the hook exposed a little bit because there's a little slot there. And this is the way the bait looks like that. This is the swing head jig setup. See, like that. And like I said, when the thing's on the bottom there, it sort of moves around like that, coming through the bottom a little bit. That head sort of wiggles around. It just sort of looks like some type of live creature on the bottom of the lake there. Okay, so before we get in, let me talk a little bit about what you want to throw it on before we get into the type of areas. You want to use a fairly heavy rod with this. Most of the time I use a 7'2" medium heavy. I use that Megabass Perfect Pitch rod. I'll link that in the description also. But this is a heavy bait. I mean, a 7/16 or 9/16, it's a pretty heavy bait. And this is a bait that, there's plastic there, so you need penetration, and a lot of times you're on a longer cast with it, so you want to have a little bit stiffer rod. Like I said, anything over 7 feet, and most of the time I'm using anywhere between 17 to 20 pound test Seaguar and Vizix line. Probably my favorite is 17 pound test on it. It fishes really good with that. So also one more thing as far as retrieving this thing before we get into the areas. This is a type of retrieve where it's different than a football head jig. On a football head jig, you'll throw it out there, and a lot of times you just sort of sweep your rod to the side on a football head jig and take up slack. On the hard head, you want it completely different because you want to make your cast out there, point your rod tip at the hard head, and just slow crank it like you're cranking a crankbait or something. what you want to pretend is when you throw the hard head out there, pretend you're throwing a crankbait. That's the best way that I can describe it. I don't pull it. I don't do anything other than there's just a slow reel. Just keep it real and slow, just like that, making sure that the bait is on the bottom. Be very, very aware that you're always hitting something on the bottom. You don't want to ever reel it so fast where it comes off the bottom. Nice slow retrieve, just a super slow retrieve. And when the fish hits it, it's a different type of a bite because you'll be reeling it like that. And all of a sudden, it's almost like you'll just lose contact with the bait and almost like it lifts up. And then your line will start swimming out, and that's when you set the hook with it. Okay, so that's pretty much the approach with it. Colors also, guys, most of the time I'm using either green pumpkin or watermelon. You can't go wrong with that. I don't consider this like a dirty water technique, although it will work in water visibilities, down to 1.5 feet or 2 feet. What I'm looking for is I want to have water visibilities probably 3 to 5 foot is the best condition in my opinion for it. And then again, with those colors, those natural colors, that's just a lot more conducive. Fish just like them better. Sometimes I'll put a little chartreuse or orange on the pinchers of the flappers. Sometimes it makes a difference. Okay, but the main thing is we're talking about this time of year in the spring. Let's talk about what you want to look for and where you want to fish it at. It'll catch them anywhere. Right off the bat, I'll just tell you, it will catch bass anywhere on it. Anywhere where you can catch bass on a crankbait is going to work, with the exception of steeper rocky banks. You can't really fish it like on a chunk rock bank or a bluffy bank or a riprap bank because they'll get hung up in the rocks. You want to have a little bit flatter type of a slope, and I prefer some type of smaller rock. Gravel is probably my favorite, although clay, sand is real good, or even, maybe rock like baseball size rock or something like that. But I just don't like the big chunk rock where, rocks as big as the hood of your truck or something like that. Probably the best success I've had on it is that mix of gravel and small rock on a flatter type bank or point. That's the thing that you want to look for. So what I'm looking for with this, I'm looking for typical pre and post spawn staging areas or recuperating areas. So given that, a lot of my concentration on this in both the pre-spawn and the post-spawn is on secondary points that are close to spawning areas. So one of my favorite things to do is I'll look at my map, or if I know the lake pretty good, I go to where I think a lot of those fish are going to be spawning at. And in the pre-spawn, I basically come out of those spawning areas and I get and try to find flat banks and flatter points. They don't have to be real flat, but I want to stay away from the steeper banks and the steeper points. Some type of a gradual slope, preferably secondary point, and I start fishing anywhere between 5 to 20 foot deep. If the water visibility is down around 2 feet, I'm fishing 5 to 10. If that water is clear, like at Table Rock Lake, I'll fish down to 20 feet deep, even when those fish are close to spawning with it. That's a really good way to catch them. Sometimes you can also just get on those banks where those banks that just the bank part going into those spawning coves. Like say, for example, if you think a lot of the bass are going to spawn in the back of a cove, get in the cove and start working down like the first 1/3 to 1/2 of the cove, especially if you got a flatter bank. That's a really good way to catch them. Also, as the fish get closer to spawning, one good way to catch them on the biffle head is to throw it around docks, like underneath the dock walkways or on the flatter type banks around docks. I've caught a lot like that. But it seems like there's a little bit of a lull when a bunch of the bass are actually bedding. They don't bite it that good, but they bite it good before and after. Now, after the spawn, really good time to catch them on it, because this is when those fish are moving out. They're done spawning, they're hungry, and they go right back out to those secondary points. And so like in the month of May, late April, May, when I figure most of the bass are spawning, I'll move right back out to those main lake points, start fishing those, and I'll start transitioning into more of the, post-spawn early summer pattern. So deeper points, ledges, all you guys that fish like the TVA lakes, fishing it on ledges is really good. Any type of a drop in a little bit deeper water. And just anywhere that you think those fish are going after they get done spawning. Every lake is different as far as, how it's going to be set up. One thing about it, it doesn't work very good around grass because you're going to get hung up a lot. It's more of a traditional man-made impoundment type of a situation. But don't just limit to that. I mean, you can, one of the things I found out about a swinghead jig is that you can just cover a lot of water with it. If you're in like a bay or a cove or something like that, where you're catching fish, say you've got a big bay or a big cove, and you're catching some fish on points, you're catching some fish around docks, you're catching some fish on rocky banks, just pick the thing up and just go down the bank with it. Just same way that you'd be covering water with a spinner bait or a topwater or a crankbait, but you're using a swinghead jig. Like I said, even though it's a jig type bait, you reel it and you can cover a lot of water. You can cover almost as much water with it as you can with a crankbait or a spinner bait. So right in the window, it's like, I don't catch much on a swinghead jig other than this time of year. March, April, and May are the best months for it. Once June gets here, I don't really catch much on it from June until the following spring. So if you haven't caught one on it, give it a try. It's a super easy bait to fish. There's nothing complicated about it. It's a fun bite. It catches quality fish. It catches a lot of fish. And if you haven't fished it, just get you a few. Like I said, I'll link everything in the description of the video if you guys want to get set up with it. But anyway, thanks for tuning into the video, and we'll talk later.